I was looking at a BBC web page today. Somebody sent me a link. It was a story about how the national grid in the UK can help people save money. Apparently, if you turn everything off, all your electric appliances during the peak period, it saves the national grid the consumption of electricity that it needs to provide. You see, the thing is, and you may not have realised this, that in these cold wintry months, the wind doesn't blow quite sufficiently and the sun doesn't shine sufficiently. And, well, if the wind don't blow, the lights don't glow. So we've all got to get used to this turning everything off and not having everything as much as we once did. This is obviously a good scheme because they're going to pay you some money to do this. So there's an incentive for you. You might get £10 here or £20 over there, depending on how much electricity you save the national grid. It's very strange, that concept, really, isn't it? Because I've always enjoyed being able to put the fire on when I'm cold. And I've always enjoyed putting on the lights when it's dark. It's always been since I was a little boy, apart from in the 70s when we had the 3-day week and we had strikes and things. And of course, that was so long ago. Who would go on strike these days? Well, OK, a few people have gone on strike, I admit that. But surely we're not in a world with all this wonderful new technology and this special solar power and the wind power that we've been told is the next generation of electricity, and we're going to find it so useful because we're going to be able to charge up our electric cars. Although quite how you would charge your electric car if you've got to turn everything down during the peak periods, and you might get a tenner back. I'm not quite sure how that works, but clearly it would work. It's going to work because they must have thought this through. Yet, if in the winter period the sun isn't shining, and I can tell you today where I live, the sun is most definitely not shining, or it is shining, but the clouds are covering all the solar panels, so it can't actually generate very much money. And it's not terribly windy either, so goodness knows how much electricity is being generated by these renewables today. But it's a good job we have a sensible government, we have sensible policies. Isn't it good that we're of course still going ahead with fossil fuels, which has got so many people out of poverty in the past, kept people warm in their houses, kept people lit up at night time, kept the streets lit up so there's no problems, there's no danger of banging into things, there's no accidents likely to happen, or no horrible villains hiding in the dark ready to attack you, by having wonderful street lighting. Thank God we've got that option. Although maybe that option hasn't been quite so viable recently because people seem to be hell-bent on phasing out those wonderful fossil fuels that we've relied on so much and have been such a benefit for us for so long. They want to get rid of them rather quickly, which does seem a bit strange. Mind you, of course, we have the net zero agenda, don't we, in which we're desperately trying to get everybody to get rid of those fossil fuels because we keep being told this very erroneous fact, it seems to me, that the climate change is such a catastrophe. For I remember some 30 years ago, we only had 10 years to go before the sea were rising and everything would burn up. And then we had another 10 years to do it because they'd made a mistake, and then we had another 10 years, and I think we've still got another 10 or 12 years. I get very confused because all these computer models that they keep telling us about how, oh yes, no, definitely this climate change is really a thing, and yet you don't see it. And so many policies have been built into this climate change is really a thing. It's man-made, we're doing it. The gas of life, CO2, such a terrible thing. The gas of life, that thing that greens the planet, that grows the plants, that enables us to eat more. Oh, it's so terrible. It does get a bit confusing. I don't know if you're like me and you just find all of this a little bit confusing, that whilst the idea of renewables is a great idea, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a clean energy that's totally dependable? But if they tell you that you've got to turn everything off at peak times, just when you're sitting down to watch that wonderful episode of Coronation Street or EastEnders or whatever the other sort of nonsense that they put on those awful television machines, that you want to make a cup of tea so you can enjoy it, or cook your dinner, or just keep the fire on because it's a bit cold and you've got to turn it off. It does seem to me that, well, somehow this new renewable energy supply is perhaps not quite ready to be rolled out en masse. And maybe we need a much longer period before we lose the wonders of those fossil fuels which have kept us warm and lit and out of poverty all these years.